Hi, I'm Thomas. Welcome to my channel. Tonight, we're slipping past velvet curtains and stepping into a world so polished, so perfumed, and so painfully dramatic that modern luxury looks like a clearance rack. Welcome to Regency England. Before we begin, tell me something. Where are you listening from? Are you in a king size bed? A tiny apartment with questionable heating? Your car? The kitchen? The bathroom? I won't judge. History has seen worse. Settle in, lower the lights, let the room go quiet, because in a moment, you're going to wake up in 1812. You're not just comfortable, you're not just doing well, you are obscenely wealthy. You own land, you own servants, you own more silk than is medically necessary. You have a carriage, a butler, and absolutely no idea how to wash your own stockings. Sounds glamorous, doesn't it? It isn't. Because wealth in Regency England doesn't mean comfort. It means performance. It means surveillance. It means 1,000 invisible rules and one wrong fork away from social extinction. You don't wake up peacefully. You wake up observed. You don't dress comfortably. You dress strategically. You don't attend dinner. You survive it. And by the end of tonight, you may decide your modern shower, your soft mattress, and your ability to wear sweatpants in public are the greatest luxuries ever invented. So get comfortable, because once the curtains open, there's no slipping back to the 21st century without at least 3 servants noticing. Let's begin. You open your eyes, not to an alarm clock, not to sunlight streaming peacefully across minimalist furniture, but to movement. Someone is already in your room. A maid crosses the carpet quietly, carrying a porcelain basin filled with water so cold it has intentions. You are not alone. You are never alone. You are rich, and being rich in 1812 means your privacy is decorative. The curtains are drawn back. Morning spills in without asking permission. Somewhere behind you, fabric rustles. A second servant waits with fresh linen. A third adjusts the fire. You have not spoken yet. 3 people are working. Your bed is enormous. Carved wood, heavy drapery, silk layered over feathers, layered over more feathers. It looks magnificent. It is also slightly damp in one corner. You choose not to investigate. There is a scent in the air: rosewater, beeswax, old fabric, something faintly lived in. Luxury in this era smells like flowers trying to win a battle. A voice near the door informs you of the weather. You nod as though this information is critical to national security. The morning wash. There is no shower. There is a bowl. The maid dips a sponge into water that feels emotionally hostile and begins dabbing at your wrists and neck with clinical efficiency. The objective is not clean. The objective is presentable in candlelight. Too much washing is considered dangerous. Too little washing is considered suspicious. So you exist in the middle: damp, perfumed, hopeful. Then comes the scent: rose, violet, bergamot, layer upon layer. By the end of it, you smell expensive enough to distract from everything else. Dressing. Getting dressed is not something you do. It is something that happens to you. Your valet approaches with the seriousness of a military officer. Stockings first, then linen, then breeches, then waistcoat. Buttons aligned like soldiers. The cravat is last. It is folded, twisted, tightened. You attempt to breathe. It is discouraged. If you are a woman, the corset enters the scene. The laces pull. You hold the bedpost. Your ribs reconsider their life choices. Beauty in Regency England requires commitment, and oxygen is optional. Breakfast. The dining table stretches longer than your patience. Silver gleams. Porcelain waits. Relatives are already seated. You take your place. Eggs are served in delicate cups. Toast arrives, slightly cold, perfectly judged. Tea is poured, conversation begins, and now the real performance starts. Every word is measured, every bite observed. If you butter your toast too generously, you lack restraint. If you decline jam, you must be unwell. An aunt asks if you slept well. She does not mean it kindly. You smile anyway. The walk. Before noon, you must be seen taking the air. You dress again. A different coat, different gloves, same discomfort. You step outside. The estate spreads before you, green, manicured, impressive, and entirely dependent on people you barely speak to. You walk slowly. You pause near the roses. A neighbor appears. Of course they do. You exchange pleasantries about the weather. You both lie. A peacock screams somewhere in the distance. It sounds judgmental. The afternoon. Time stretches. You sit in the drawing room. Sunlight filters through lace. Someone suggests cards. Someone else suggests poetry. You suggest nothing. Boredom arrives gently. Not sharp, not dramatic, just present. You stare into the fire. You wonder if this is what success feels like. The clock ticks. You are surrounded by comfort and slightly unsettled. The carriage is prepared. You are dressed again. Of course you are. A different coat, a different bonnet, a different version of yourself. Social calls are not optional. They are inspections disguised as pleasantries. You arrive precisely late enough to seem important, but not careless. The footman announces your name as if unveiling a new opera. Inside, the drawing room smells faintly of lavender and competition. You compliment the wallpaper. You admire a portrait. You sip tea that is either too hot or deeply suspicious. Every sentence is layered. How lovely means I noticed. How daring means I would never. You remain exactly 12 minutes, long enough to be gracious, not long enough to be trapped. You leave victorious. No dogs insulted, no alliances damaged. A success. Back home, tea awaits. Tiny sandwiches, smaller cakes, scones with political consequences. There is a correct way to split a scone. There are factions. Cream first, jam first. Choose wisely. You hold your cup with precision. Your wrist aches. You pretend it doesn't. Conversation drifts towards scandal, gently, delicately. A late carriage, a missing glove, an unusually long dance. Information in Regency England is currency, and tea is the stock exchange. You say little, you listen carefully. Evening approaches, candles are lit. You dress again, layered, buttoned, secured. Dinner is war in silk gloves. Seating is strategy. You pray not to be placed beside someone who discusses livestock with enthusiasm. Soup arrives, then fish, then meat, then something in aspic that trembles with quiet threat. Wine loosens tongues. Laughter grows louder. Someone tells a story slightly too bold. An eyebrow lifts across the table. You say something witty. It lands. A small victory. But you remain alert. One misplaced remark can echo for years. Music swells. The doors open. Light floods the polished floor. The ballroom is radiant and merciless. You scan the room. Allies, rivals, possibilities. A dance begins. You bow. You curtsy. You move carefully. Every step is choreography. Every glance monitored. A gloved hand brushes yours. Electric. And immediately witnessed. You speak of safe things, weather, music, the quality of the orchestra. Never politics, never feelings. The dance ends. You retreat for lemonade. Your shoes ache. Your smile remains flawless. The crowd thins. Carriages depart. But the night is not finished. Shadows stretch across the garden. Gravel crunches beneath careful footsteps. Whispers travel farther in moonlight. Some meet in secret. Some argue quietly. Some simply stand beneath the stars and breathe without supervision for the first time all day. You feel something unfamiliar. Freedom. Brief. Fragile. Then a door creaks. A chaperone coughs in the distance. The spell breaks. You return to your room. Servants assist with the layers. Pins removed, buttons undone, corset loosened, breath restored. The candle flickers. The house settles. You sit on the edge of the bed, and for a moment, no audience, no performance, no expectations. You look into the fire, and you wonder, is this enough? The wealth, the status, the endless routine? Tomorrow will be the same. Breakfast, walks, letters, smiles. You are admired. You are envied. You are watched. But you are rarely alone with your own thoughts. You lie down. The mattress shifts beneath you. Feathers sigh. The curtains are drawn tight. Outside, a fox cries in the dark. Inside, the house sleeps. You survived. No scandal, no public humiliation, no fainting. Just another day of being extraordinarily wealthy and slightly exhausted. And as you drift into sleep, layered in linen, scented with rosewater, surrounded by luxury that is both magnificent and mildly inconvenient, you might find yourself missing something simple. Privacy, comfort, silence. And perhaps, just perhaps, a hot shower. Good night. Morning light slips into your room again. Not dramatic, not golden and cinematic, just steady, reliable, on schedule. Because everything here runs on schedule. You're not rushed, you never are. But somehow the house already feels awake before you are. The fire is burning again. You didn't light it. There's fresh water waiting. You didn't ask for it. Your boots are polished. You didn't touch them. That's the strange part of being rich in 1812. You own the house, but you don't actually run it. You inherited authority, but you rarely exercise it directly. Your life works like a machine, and you're not the one turning the gears. You're above it, elegant, untouched, and if you're honest, a little removed from it. Late morning means estate matters. It sounds impressive. It sounds responsible. It sounds like you're about to do something significant. Then the steward walks in. He carries ledgers thick enough to injure someone, and suddenly it becomes clear. This is real for him. He talks about drainage problems, boundary disputes, crops underperforming, tenants behind on rent. This affects livelihoods. It affects futures. A roof is failing. A family needs more time to pay. The wheat didn't yield what it should. There's trouble near the western fence line. You listen. You nod. You fold your hands neatly. Let's look at the options, which, in practice, means handle it carefully while I remain composed. Leadership, for you, isn't physical. It's posture. It's tone. It's appearing calm when numbers are less calm. But don't mistake that for comfort. If the estate declines, so does your standing. Not immediately, not loudly, quietly, gradually. And in your world, decline starts with whispers. If you're honest, managing land isn't your real job. Managing perception is. Every invitation you accept, every one you decline, every letter you send or don't send, every seating arrangement at dinner. It's strategy, even if no one calls it that. You must be visible, but not eager. You must be generous, but not foolish. You must be charming, but not threatening. It's constant calibration. And when you misjudge it, there's no dramatic confrontation, just distance. A slightly cooler greeting, an invitation that doesn't arrive. In Regency society, exile doesn't come with shouting. It arrives politely, over tea. Here's what wealth really gives you: an audience. Servants notice patterns. Neighbors notice changes. Relatives remember tone shifts from 3 months ago. You can't be careless. You can't experiment. You can't fall apart. Because someone will see it. Someone will comment. Someone else will repeat it. And repetition is how reputations fracture. So you adjust. You laugh slightly softer. You react slightly slower. You reveal slightly less. Not because you're forced to, because you've learned. Deviation costs. The emptiness that can appear in a perfect room. Late afternoon. The house is quiet. The drawing room is flawless. The portraits above the mantel look proud, stern, expectant. You sit down. You're comfortable. Objectively, you have everything arranged beautifully around you. And still, something feels unfilled. There's no crisis, no emergency, no demand, just time and space. You could practice music. You could write letters. You could read something profound. You don't. You watch the fire instead. You listen to the clock. And in that stillness, it creeps in. Not sadness, not despair, just a question. Is the performance the point, or is there supposed to be something beyond it? You shift slightly in your chair. The upholstery sighs beneath you, as though even the furniture understands the weight of inherited stillness. The fire gives a quiet crack. The clock continues its steady counting. Time does not hesitate for reflection. You look around the room more carefully now. The symmetry, the polish, the deliberate arrangement of objects chosen by people long gone. Every table placed with intention. Every portrait hung to reinforce continuity. This room has been perfect for decades, perhaps longer. And yet, perfection does not pulse. It does not breathe. It holds. It preserves. It sustains. But it does not move. You realize something quietly unsettling. The house is designed to maintain itself. The structure of your life is designed to repeat itself. Stability is achieved through repetition, through predictability, through careful avoidance of disruption. You wonder if the architects of this existence ever paused as you are now. If your grandfather ever sat in this same chair, staring into this same fire, asking a similar question. Or if he simply moved forward without examining it. Perhaps that is the difference between comfort and awareness. A servant passes the doorway. Soft footsteps, measured pace. The world continues functioning without your involvement. You are not needed in this moment, and that realization is both privilege and quiet discomfort. To be unnecessary in your own domain. To be essential in reputation, but optional in execution. You stand slowly, cross the room, pause before the mantel. The portraits above you do not smile. They do not reveal doubt. They project certainty, continuity, expectation. You study their eyes. There is pride there, but also something else. Discipline, control, containment. You begin to understand that they were not free either. They simply wore their constraints differently. You move toward the window. Outside, the grounds stretch calmly. The distant cottages are small against the land. Smoke rises from one chimney. There are people there who do not have the luxury of questioning structure. Their days are not filled with controlled etiquette. Their concerns are immediate, concrete, unavoidable. And yet, you suspect they too feel questions in quieter moments. Because emptiness is not exclusive to wealth. It simply changes costume. You return to your chair, but you do not sit immediately. You remain standing in the center of the room, as though stepping outside the arrangement, even by a few inches, alters something subtle. You imagine what would happen if you did something unexpected, not scandalous, not reckless, simply unplanned. What if you walked beyond the prescribed path tomorrow morning? What if you declined an invitation without justification? What if you chose silence where wit is expected? The consequences would not be catastrophic, but they would be noted. And being noted carries weight. You understand now that performance is not merely social habit. It is protective. It shields the estate from instability. It shields your family from scrutiny. It shields you from uncertainty. The performance is not empty. It is functional, which makes the question more complicated. If the performance sustains everything, then what exactly are you searching for beyond it? Perhaps you are not searching for something beyond. Perhaps you are searching for something within. A place inside the structure where you are not simply reacting, not simply preserving, but choosing. The difference is subtle, but significant. You sit again, this time differently, not as a figure placed within a portrait, but as a person occupying a room. You allow the quiet to remain. You do not rush to fill it. You do not summon music. You do not ring for tea. You let the stillness exist without labeling it emptiness. The clock continues. The fire lowers slightly. Light shifts across the carpet, and something settles. Not resolution, not revelation, just clarity. The performance may be the framework, but awareness is the freedom inside it. You cannot dismantle the system. You would not want to. It provides too much: security, position, continuity. But you can inhabit it consciously. You can choose how you move within it. You can notice when you are performing and when you are simply present. That may be enough. Not dramatic transformation, not escape, just deliberate existence. A bell rings faintly in the distance. Tea is being prepared. Voices stir somewhere down the corridor. The house returns to motion. You smooth your coat, adjust your cuffs, step back into rhythm. But something is subtly altered. You are no longer asking whether there's something beyond the performance. You understand now that the question itself was the shift. The drawing room remains flawless. The portraits remain stern. The estate continues its steady hum. And you, still wealthy, still observed, still positioned within structure, carry a quieter understanding. The emptiness was not absence. It was space. And space, when recognized, can be inhabited. Tomorrow will look the same. Breakfast, estate matters, visits, letters, dinner. But inside the repetition, you will notice. And that noticing is where something real begins. And that noticing is where something real begins. Not rebellion, not revolution, just awareness. And once awareness enters a life like yours, it does not politely leave. You begin to see things you once moved past without question. The way servants lower their eyes, not out of devotion, but habit. The way conversations in drawing rooms circle endlessly around safety. The way laughter often sounds slightly measured, as if calibrated. Life for the filthy rich is not chaos. It is containment. What was it really like? It was this. It was waking every morning into comfort so complete it bordered on confinement. It was never being physically exhausted, but often being socially depleted. It was knowing that your worst inconvenience would never resemble true hardship, and still feeling the quiet weight of expectation pressing on your ribs. It was safety at the cost of spontaneity. You attend another dinner 2 nights later. Nothing remarkable happens. No scandal, no broken engagements, no dramatic announcements. And that is precisely the point. Most days were not dramatic. They were repetitive, carefully managed, staged for stability. You sit through courses of roast and aspic, listening to discussions of grain tariffs and London fashions, watching subtle rivalries play out through seating arrangements and raised eyebrows. No one shouts, no one fights, but power shifts constantly, in whispers, in who is consulted, in who is ignored. You begin to understand that wealth did not remove struggle, it refined it. The struggle was no longer survival, it was positioning, maintaining, outlasting. Every family at that table fears decline. They would never admit it, but they all know the stories. Estates lost through debt, reputations undone by a single rumor, fortunes drained by one reckless heir. Being rich in Regency England meant constantly protecting the illusion that you would remain so. After dinner, the gentlemen remain with their brandy. The women retreat to the drawing room. You observe the ritual separation, 2 performances running simultaneously. The men speak of politics and investments. The women speak of alliances and family connections. Both conversations are economic, just in different currencies. Marriage was economics. Friendship was economics. Even kindness could be strategic. That is what life was really like. Not constant glamour, but constant calculation. And yet, there were moments. Small ones. Unscripted. You see it when a younger cousin laughs too freely and must quickly recover. You see it when your future spouse, yes, that future now feels inevitable, allows a genuine smile to break through rehearsed composure. You see it when your father lingers by the fire longer than necessary, staring not at the flames, but through them. Everyone here carries something unspoken. Responsibility, fear, regret, ambition. Even the wealthy are not immune to longing. They are simply trained to disguise it better. The next morning, estate matters are less abstract. You accompany the steward on a short ride across the land. The air is colder than you expected. The road less smooth than the gravel paths near the house. You pass cottages. You see worn fences. Children watching from doorways. This too is part of your life. Not just the chandeliers. The damp earth. The roof that needs repair. The tenant who cannot pay this quarter. You begin to understand that your comfort rests on a system that extends far beyond silk curtains. Your wealth is tied to harvest yields, to weather patterns, to the labor of hands that will never dine at your table. Life for the rich was not manual, but it was interconnected, deeply. The steward speaks of drainage, of crop rotation, of repairs needed before winter deepens. You nod, but this time you listen differently, not as performance, but as participation. Because what was life really like? It was responsibility disguised as leisure. Back at the house, letters await. Invitations, requests, subtle reminders of your engagement. Your future is no longer theoretical. It is assembling itself quietly. Your days will not change dramatically after marriage. That is another truth rarely spoken. The structure remains. The dinners continue. The alliances expand. You will move into different rooms, host rather than attend, but the choreography persists. Life for the wealthy was not a fairy tale. It was administration. That evening, you sit again in the drawing room, but it feels slightly altered because you are altered. You no longer see the room as purely decorative. You see it as symbol, as evidence, as expectation. The portraits no longer intimidate you. They instruct you. They survived within this system. Some flourished, some endured quietly. Some likely felt what you feel now. You think about happiness. It was not pursued the way it is now. Fulfillment was not the primary goal. Stability was. Continuity, family preservation, reputation. Personal satisfaction was secondary, sometimes tertiary. And yet, within that framework, people still found moments of connection, shared glances, private jokes, long walks where conversation dropped its armor. It was not joyless, it was simply structured. Later that night, when the house falls silent again, you do not feel the same emptiness as before. The question has shifted. It is no longer, is there supposed to be something beyond the performance? It is, how do I live truthfully inside it? Life for the filthy rich during Regency England was not constant indulgence. It was discipline wrapped in luxury. It was security balanced against scrutiny. It was power managed carefully. It was inheritance carried like fragile glass. You had everything except anonymity. You had comfort except freedom from expectation. You had influence except the ability to live carelessly. And yet, you would not trade it, not truly, because uncertainty was harsher, instability was unforgiving. The world beyond your gates was less predictable. This life was narrow, but it was safe. Tomorrow, you will rise again. Breakfast will be served. Letters will arrive. Plans will be made. Your engagement will solidify. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you will become what the portraits above the mantel represent: composed, controlled, preserved in posture. But inside, you will remember the afternoon when you sat alone in a perfect room and asked a question most never dare to form. And that memory will keep you human. What was life really like for the filthy rich during Regency England? It was beautiful. It was rigid. It was secure. It was watchful. It was quieter than legend suggests. And beneath the chandeliers and powdered wigs, it was simply human. Structured, observed, occasionally restless, and always sustained by the delicate balance between appearance and survival. Marriage does not arrive like a thunderclap. It arrives like paperwork. Signatures, witnesses, measured congratulations, and then continuity. The morning after your wedding feels remarkably similar to the morning before it. The fire is lit, the curtains drawn, the house already awake before you are. But something has shifted, not in the structure of the estate, in the structure of your identity. You are no longer only heir. You are half of an alliance, half of a calculation that stretches across fields, contracts, and generations yet unborn. Married life for the filthy rich in earlier centuries whether Regency or even further back in medieval times, was rarely about romance as the center. It was about consolidation, land joining land, names joining names, risk being reduced, influence expanding. In medieval noble households, marriage could mean fortifying borders, ending feuds, securing military support, producing legitimate heirs. In Regency England, the swords are gone, but the strategy remains. The battlefield is social. The weapons are invitations and inheritance law. The objective is the same: stability. You and your spouse begin learning each other carefully, not through dramatic declarations, but through small negotiations. Who hosts which dinners? How finances are reviewed? Which relatives are welcomed? Which are tolerated? You are polite, attentive, guarded. Because intimacy in your world is layered. Trust must coexist with caution. You quickly discover that marriage among the wealthy is a partnership of management. There are estates to review, staff to oversee, seasonal events to coordinate. If you are in a medieval noble household, there may be tenants petitioning in the courtyard, disputes over land boundaries, supplies to store for winter. If you are in Regency England, the tone is softer, but the responsibility remains. Accounts must be balanced, alliances maintained, appearances curated. Love may grow, or it may not, but cooperation is essential. You learn the rhythm of shared power. It is delicate. In public, unity is displayed. Privately, influence is negotiated. A medieval noblewoman might manage entire sections of the estate in her husband's absence, supervise servants, oversee harvest storage, arrange marriages for younger relatives. A Regency wife might control social access, control invitations, shape alliances through conversation rather than decree. Authority flows differently, but it flows. Behind every lord is often a strategist. Behind every grand dinner is someone calculating the guest list like a chessboard. Children become the next expectation. Not immediately, perhaps, but inevitably. An heir is not simply desired. An heir is required. In medieval times, without a legitimate son, land could fracture, claims could be challenged. In Regency society, inheritance laws remain rigid. Property must pass cleanly. Continuity must be visible. Pregnancy is no small matter. It is watched, discussed, anticipated by extended family with quiet intensity. You realize that your body, or your spouse's body, is not entirely private. It is political. If a son is born, relief spreads quietly but unmistakably. If daughters arrive first, congratulations are warm but edged with continued hope. This is not cruelty. It is structure. Land and titles flow through specific channels, and deviation from that path introduces uncertainty. Married life for the wealthy is not idle. It is busy in ways that look gentle from the outside. You host. You travel to neighboring estates. You attend christenings. You mourn at funerals. You send letters confirming alliances. Every interaction reinforces your position, or weakens it. In medieval households, security was literal. Castles required maintenance. Guards required payment. Supplies had to withstand siege or winter famine. Marriage strengthened military networks. In Regency times, the threats are subtler. Debt, scandal, political shifts. But the vigilance is the same. You protect what you now share. Over time, familiarity replaces formality. You and your spouse develop a language beyond public etiquette. A glance across a crowded room that says enough. A slight nod to adjust conversation. A shared understanding of which relatives to keep at distance. Perhaps affection grows in these quiet efficiencies. Not dramatic passion, but partnership. And partnership in your world is powerful. Yet even within marriage, the structure persists. You are still observed, still evaluated, still measured against peers. Other couples compare estates, compare children, compare influence. Even domestic happiness can become performance. You host dinners to display unity. You attend balls to demonstrate vitality. You smile for portraits that will outlive you. And sometimes, in the late evening, after guests have left, after staff have retired, after the house has quieted, you sit together without audience, without choreography, just two people bound by arrangement and time. Those moments are rare, but they are real, and they reveal something often forgotten in grand historical summaries. The wealthy were not caricatures. They were individuals navigating systems much larger than themselves. Life for the filthy rich in medieval times or Regency England was not constant celebration. It was endurance dressed in velvet. It was responsibility inherited before maturity. It was security purchased with autonomy. You lived comfortably, but not carelessly. Years pass, children grow, the estate expands or contracts depending on fortune. You attend more funerals than weddings now. You become one of the portraits above the mantel in posture, if not yet in frame. The questions you once asked feel less urgent, not because they were answered, but because you have integrated them. The emptiness that once appeared in perfect rooms no longer frightens you. You understand it. It is the pause between obligations, the quiet between performances, the space where you remember you are human beneath the title. Married life, ultimately, becomes less about the original alliance and more about shared endurance, shared decision-making, shared aging. You witness your spouse's fears, their strengths, their regrets. They witness yours. And within the rigid structure of wealth and expectation, something unexpectedly tender can form. Not because the system encourages it, but because proximity does. What was married life really like for the filthy rich? It was strategic. It was watched. It was disciplined. It was occasionally lonely. It was sometimes unexpectedly companionable. It was a partnership forged under pressure, and it was rarely as dramatic as modern imagination prefers. The house remains. The land continues producing. The children grow into their own performances. And you, once restless in a perfect drawing room, now understand that life inside inherited structure is less about escape and more about adaptation. The chandelier still glows. The portraits still observe. The machinery of status continues humming. But you no longer float above it. You inhabit it, deliberately, quietly. And that, for someone born into wealth in centuries past, was perhaps the closest thing to freedom available. Years do not pass loudly in houses like this. They settle, layer upon layer, like dust no one sees because it is constantly polished away. You wake one morning and realize the corridors feel shorter, the ceilings slightly lower, not because the architecture has changed, because you have. The children are no longer small. They move through the halls with the same rehearsed posture you once practiced. They bow slightly. They speak carefully. They understand, already, that eyes are always watching. And you see it now, the beginning of their performance. This is what life was really like for the filthy rich. It was inheritance not only of land, but of behavior, of caution, of measured tone. Your son learns how to shake hands before he learns how to question. Your daughter learns how to receive a compliment before she learns how to express disagreement. No one teaches them directly. The house teaches them. And you allow it, because the house kept you safe. Marriage deepens into something quieter, less strategic, more practical. You and your spouse no longer perform for one another. You coordinate. You divide responsibilities without discussing them. They handle correspondence with one branch of the family. You manage estate reviews with the steward. You both monitor the children, not harshly, but constantly. Because what was life really like? It was vigilance disguised as elegance. There are seasons when the harvest is poor. The accounts tighten, not disastrously, but noticeably. You dismiss 2 servants quietly, not because you wish to, because maintaining excess during instability invites scrutiny. You skip one London season, explain it as preference for the countryside. No one challenges the explanation, but they notice. They always notice. Wealth in medieval times was even more fragile. A failed crop could threaten survival. A political shift could redraw borders overnight. Marriage alliances could collapse into open conflict. Life for the wealthy was not insulated from danger. It was simply differently exposed. Castles fell. Titles were revoked. Lands seized. In Regency England, collapse comes slower. Through debt, through scandal, through isolation. But the fear of it is constant. You begin to understand your father more clearly now. His watchfulness, his restraint, his refusal to indulge every whim. He was not cold. He was calculating survival. And now, you are doing the same. Occasionally, there are moments of genuine contentment. A quiet afternoon where your spouse laughs freely. A child returning from studies with surprising insight. A dinner that feels less like performance and more like conversation. These moments are not grand, but they are steady, and steadiness becomes its own form of peace. Still, there are nights, even now, when the house is silent, when the fire has dimmed, when you stand once again at the window and you remember the question, is the performance the point? You no longer ask it with unrest. You ask it with perspective. The performance was never the point. It was the structure, the scaffolding. What mattered was how you inhabited it. Your children will face the same realization, perhaps earlier, perhaps later. They will sit in a flawless room one afternoon, and they will feel the space. And they will ask their own version of the question. You cannot spare them that, nor should you, because awareness is the only inheritance more valuable than land. Time advances, hair grays subtly, movements slow. You attend fewer balls, host more intimate dinners, speak less, listen more. Reputation becomes solid, stable. You are no longer being assessed as potential. You are established. And establishment is quieter, less glittering, more grounded. Life for the filthy rich was not endless excitement. It was long stretches of order punctuated by subtle shifts. It was duty wrapped in velvet, security accompanied by observation, influence paired with constraint. You had access to luxury, but not escape from expectation. And then one day, you realize you are becoming the portrait. Not literally, but in posture, in gaze, in the way younger guests measure themselves in your presence. You are now part of the structure you once examined from the inside. And surprisingly, it does not feel oppressive. It feels earned. Married life settles into companionship, not dramatic passion, not fairy tale devotion, but familiarity, shared memory, shared endurance, shared knowledge of the machinery beneath the chandeliers. You and your spouse sit across from each other one evening without guests. No agenda, no performance, just quiet. and it is enough. This is what history often forgets. The wealthy were not constantly indulging. They were managing, maintaining, calculating, balancing image and survival. Their lives were structured, yes, but within that structure were small human moments, fears, tenderness, doubt, satisfaction. You think back to the younger version of yourself, sitting in that perfect drawing room, asking if something was missing. Now you understand. Nothing was missing. It simply required depth. The structure did not remove meaning. It required you to create it intentionally. Life for the filthy rich in medieval times or Regency England was not freedom. It was responsibility. It was security purchased with vigilance. It was comfort maintained by discipline. It was marriage built first on alliance, then, if fortunate, on respect. And sometimes, quietly, on affection. The house remains. The land continues. Your children begin stepping into their own roles. The cycle does not break. It evolves. You no longer resist the repetition. You understand it. And so, when the light spills into your chamber again tomorrow, gentle, persistent, unhurried, you will rise, not as someone trapped by wealth, not as someone dazzled by it, but as someone who knows exactly what it costs and exactly what it sustains. Life for the filthy rich was not a fantasy. It was a system. And within that system, you learned how to live. Quietly, deliberately, completely. There is something else no one mentions when they describe the lives of the wealthy in centuries past. Fear. Not dramatic fear, not the kind that sends people running, but the quiet, administrative kind. The kind that sits inside ledgers, inside inheritance laws, inside whispered conversations after midnight. Because no matter how large the estate, no matter how thick the stone walls, no matter how polished the silver, nothing was guaranteed. Not really. In medieval times, a single illness could change succession overnight. A fever, a fall from a horse, a poorly healed wound. And suddenly, the line of inheritance shifts. Alliances tremble. Guardians are appointed. Land becomes vulnerable. Even in Regency England, where medicine had improved only slightly, health remained uncertain. Doctors arrived with confidence, but limited solutions. Bloodletting, tonics, rest cures, hope. You could afford the finest physician in London. You could not purchase certainty. And so wealthy households lived with contingency plans. Second sons prepared quietly. Daughters educated carefully. Wills drafted early, updated often. You might appear relaxed at dinner, but somewhere in a locked drawer, your future is written in ink, rewritten whenever circumstances shift. Then there is politics. For medieval nobles, loyalty was life. Support the wrong monarch and you might lose your lands. Choose the wrong alliance and your castle might not stand another season. History books summarize it in neat paragraphs, but living through it meant constant watchfulness. Who is rising? Who is falling? Whose banner are you flying? In Regency England, the risks are more refined. Parliament shifts, trade changes, colonial conflicts alter fortunes, investments fluctuate. You might never see the battlefield, but its consequences arrive in your accounts. This is what life was really like. Not lounging endlessly in silk, but calculating stability, preserving influence, ensuring your children inherit not just land, but security. There is also the matter of image. Reputation was currency, and unlike gold, it could evaporate. One scandal, one rumor, one misjudged alliance, and doors begin closing quietly. Not slammed, just not opened. You might still possess wealth, but isolation is its own poverty. The wealthy depended on each other, socially, economically, politically. Exclusion was slow erosion. So you learn to monitor yourself, your laughter, your spending, your temper, even your grief. Yes, even grief had etiquette. In medieval courts, mourning had structure, specific garments, specific durations, public displays measured precisely. In Regency society, too much emotion invited discomfort, too little invited suspicion. Everything balanced, always balanced. And then there was religion, not as a joke, not as decoration, but as framework. In medieval times especially, belief was interwoven with authority. Kings ruled by divine right. Nobles justified hierarchy through order believed to be sanctioned from above. Faith structured obedience. Obedience structured stability. Even in Regency England, church attendance was not merely spiritual. It was social positioning, visibility, respectability. The pew you occupied mattered. The company you kept afterward mattered more. And yet, beneath all of it, power. The wealthy held it, but they also feared losing it. Because power invites envy. It attracts ambition. It demands maintenance. In medieval castles, guards stood at gates for a reason. In Regency townhouses, discretion guarded reputations just as fiercely. You realize something as you sit once more in the fading light. Wealth insulated you from hunger, but not from responsibility. From cold nights, but not from calculation. From physical labor, but not from mental vigilance. Life for the filthy rich was structured by expectation. Born into a script already written, you did not choose your role. You inherited it. Some embraced it eagerly, some resented it quietly. Most adapted. And then there was leisure, real leisure. It did exist. Hunts across frosted fields, music echoing in vaulted halls, long summer evenings where conversation drifted beyond politics. But even leisure had hierarchy. Who was invited? Who led? Who followed? Even joy was choreographed. The servants knew this. They observed everything. Below stairs, commentary flowed freely. They understood that those above were not gods. They were managers of perception, sometimes frightened ones. History often paints the wealthy as indulgent caricatures, but living inside that system required discipline, endurance, awareness. A misstep at the wrong moment could echo for generations. There were also seasons of true fear. Plague in medieval cities, political unrest, economic crashes, war. The wealthy had walls. But walls do not stop uncertainty. They only delay it. As years pass, you begin to see the estate differently again, not as inheritance, not as burden, but as ecosystem. Every action affects another. A careless investment strains tenants. A social feud isolates allies. A strategic marriage strengthens resilience. Wealth was not static. It was dynamic, fragile beneath its grandeur. And perhaps that is the most honest truth. Life for the filthy rich was not easy. It was insulated. But insulation can distort pressure rather than eliminate it. They did not worry about bread. They worried about continuity. They did not fear winter frost. They feared decline. They did not chase survival. They defended legacy. The house is quiet again now. The fire low. The portraits watch. You understand them more than you once did. They were not symbols of perfection. They were survivors of structure, just as you are. Life for the filthy rich in medieval times in Regency England was not fantasy. It was responsibility carried with elegance. It was power balanced against vulnerability. It was comfort sustained by vigilance. And beneath every polished surface, there was calculation, hope, fear, and the steady determination to ensure that when the light returned in the morning, the estate and the name would still stand. The servants knew this. They observed everything. Below stairs, commentary flowed freely. They understood that those above were not gods. They were managers of perception, sometimes frightened ones. History often paints the wealthy as indulgent caricatures, but living inside that system required discipline, endurance, awareness. A misstep at the wrong moment could echo for generations. There were also seasons of true fear. Plague in medieval cities, political unrest, economic crashes, war. The wealthy had walls. But walls do not stop uncertainty. They only delay it. As years pass, you begin to see the estate differently again, not as inheritance, not as burden, but as ecosystem. Every action affects another. A careless investment strains tenants. A social feud isolates allies. A strategic marriage strengthens resilience. Wealth was not static. It was dynamic, fragile beneath its grandeur. And perhaps that is the most honest truth. Life for the filthy rich was not easy. It was insulated. But insulation can distort pressure rather than eliminate it. They did not worry about bread. They worried about continuity. They did not fear winter frost. They feared decline. They did not chase survival. They defended legacy. The house is quiet again now. The fire low. The portraits watch. You understand them more than you once did. They were not symbols of perfection. They were survivors of structure, just as you are. Life for the filthy rich in medieval times in Regency England was not fantasy. It was responsibility carried with elegance. It was power balanced against vulnerability. It was comfort sustained by vigilance. And beneath every polished surface, there was calculation, hope, fear, and the steady determination to ensure that when the light returned in the morning, the estate and the name would still stand. And so the house grows quiet. Not dramatically, not with finality, just with that familiar settling, the kind old estates have always known. The fire lowers to embers. The last servant footsteps fade down the corridor. A door closes somewhere in the distance. The machinery of wealth, so loud during the day, softens into a hum. You stand for a moment longer at the window. The grounds stretch into darkness. The trees barely move. The cottages are dim. And for the first time in a long while, nothing is required of you. No decision, no posture, no reply, just stillness. What was life really like for the filthy rich in Regency England? In medieval times? In any age? It was not endless indulgence. It was not a permanent feast beneath chandeliers. It was not a fairy tale. It was structure, expectation, strategy, inheritance. It was being born into a machine that was already running and learning how not to be crushed by its gears. You had silk, but also scrutiny. You had servants, but also surveillance. You had land, but also liability. You had influence, but also isolation. You did not worry about hunger. You worried about erosion, about reputation fading, about alliances cooling, about children inheriting something weaker than what you received. And yet, you also laughed. You adapted. You loved, sometimes quietly. You aged. You sat in perfect rooms and felt imperfect questions. You learned that wealth does not remove humanity. It simply wraps it in velvet. Tomorrow, the light will return. It always does. The fire will be lit before you notice the chill. Boots polished before they dull. Letters waiting before you ask. The rhythm will resume. Breakfast, estate matters, visits, dinner, silence. Repeat. and you will step into it once more, not as someone dazzled, not as someone trapped, but as someone aware. That is the quiet truth history rarely lingers on. Behind every grand portrait was a person managing pressure. Behind every estate was a web of fragile balance. Behind every title was a human mind, occasionally restless, often disciplined, always navigating. You draw the curtains, the room darkens, the portraits disappear into shadow. The performance ends for the night, and for a few brief hours, you are not heir, not spouse, not host, not symbol, just a person beneath heavy blankets and inherited expectations. The house settles, the estate rests, the name endures, and you, perfectly dressed, perpetually observed, historically misunderstood, close your eyes. Because even the filthy rich of Regency England needed sleep. And in sleep, for a little while, the structure lets go. Good night.